Good afternoon. Welcome to those in the room and those joining via Zoom, and our colleague from Doha, Ayat Hamdan, from the Arab Center. Welcome to all of you. I will be speaking a bit longer than usual today. I will not take much of your time, but there is something that I have to tell you today. Before we present our agenda for the day, I wish to read something for you, and then I will quote it. What we will be presenting today is part of a broader study that will be published in almost 2 months. But here, under the title, Encouraging Complementarity Between the Economies of the 1948 Areas and the West Bank and Gaza, complementarity between both parts is based on relative competitive edge of each party, depending on the type of their production. This equation will be achieved via trade exchange between both parts that will reduce the cost of production to achieve maximum cost-effective production in order to avoid the marked unemployment and the structural problems of the means of production of both parties. Since this trade between both parties is not subject to an organized trade operation, and since there aren't accurate data on the volume of this trade, therefore, it is important to achieve this goal based on a study of the assets in the West Bank and Gaza Strip and the Arab community inside Israel. And we need to come closer to the developmental pattern, that is the development of the Arab community in separation and isolation of those applied to the Jewish community in Israel. And we have to benefit from any existing opportunities that will focus or help us focus on the priorities of the Arabs inside Israel. This was written in 1991 by a team of researchers. I was one of this team, and Dr. Rasim Khamaise, who is probably present here today, and Dr. Asal. So the findings of our study are not different, essentially or substantially, from what was said 30 years ago. And this was a study commissioned by the Welfare Association, which was an idea of complementary economy. Today, we all think about it, and we have a kind of mobilization of private sector representatives who have experiences and a vision regarding this relationship. So I wanted to launch our meeting today with this thinking and how the situation changed. Today, we are organizing this roundtable discussion to follow up on a question that was discussed in a study 30 years ago. So there are motives behind the study, and there were previous studies by Madar Association to assess the level of exchange between both parties, and MAS now is presenting this comprehensive study with chapters on the history of this relationship on many aspects that we will not be able to discuss in our presentation today. What will be presented today in the next 2 hours, first of all, the digital platform built by our colleagues at MAS for the findings of the survey we done, and it was implemented by Al Jalil organization inside the Green Line. This digital or online platform is an online portal, and they will give you a simplified presentation. These are not the messages. This is a rigorous beginning to identify the problems and what can come. So now we filled part of the vacuum in data, and then we'll be commenting on this part of the work. Our colleague from Doha Institute, Dr. Ayhab Saad, and via Zoom. Muhammad Ashekh, who is the director of Al Jalil organization, and he has his preliminary comments on the study. Then we will shift to presenting the conclusions of the study, that is the proposed policies, and they are ordered according to the competent parties. So there is the Palestinian government that comes in the first place, and with the most details and burden regarding what should be done today and tomorrow and after tomorrow. The private sector on both sides of the green line. And we had extensive discussion and involved the private sector in the recommendations and presentation of the problems. The representative associations inside the green line and the local councils, because this is at this level that the experience is being lived. It's not at the level of mass or at the level of the government. The experience that has a approximate value of $2 billion in economic relations. We export services and products and re-exports more than we export our officially registered exports. So this is moving on. And especially for municipalities and local councils that can play an important role. Now, this is a matter of good reception, avoid fraud, and so on. But then for other reasons, it is necessary to establish, for example, industrial estates, because there are industrial capacities and they are fragmented. So they need to be consolidated. So these recommendations will be presented by Dr. Rabih Murad, who is a co-author, and Dr. Shhade. They will present this part, and then we will resume our discussion, because we will not have a two-way discussion. It will be a floor discussion with feedback from Mr. Mudar Yunus. I hope he has already joined us over Zoom. And Mr. Muhammad Al-Amour, representing the Coordinating Council of the Palestinian Private Sector. We were waiting for His Excellency, the Minister of National Economy, Khaled Al-Aseli, but it seems that he will not be able to join us. Without any further ado, I will introduce our colleague, Ayat Hamdan. Welcome, Ayat. You may take as much time as you need. Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction and for your efforts to organize this seminar. On behalf of the Arab Center for Policy Research and Studies, I wish to welcome our colleagues in Ramallah and through the social online platform. As Mr. Raja has mentioned, this seminar aims to launch a policy paper on the prospects of economic cooperation across the Green Line, which is the conclusions of a broader projects that we have implemented in cooperation with Mass Institute, and it will soon be published in a book by the Arab Center. The cooperation lies in the core of the research interests of the Arab Center, because it considers the Arab area as an important research area, focusing on the Palestinian question out of its conviction that it is an important question since it is the last case of colonization. It also covers the different social, political, and economic aspects of the Palestinian life, and it is on top of the Arab interests, especially in the light of the marginalization that is taking place. Going to the economy in the occupied Palestinian territory, we need to focus on the effect of Israeli economic hegemony and all of the procedures that aim to consolidate the colonial usurpation of this economy, and this is quite visible in the systematic procedures and measures of the Israeli occupation by the control of land, natural resources, and the trade corridors, as well as the impact of the accord signed by the PLO and later by the Palestinian Authority, especially regarding the economic protocols and the systematic and compound discrimination that the Palestinian citizens in Israel are facing, in addition to the structural economic challenges that they are facing. The studies also highlighted the impact of international assistance on policy, economy, and the society in the occupied Palestinian territory as an important factor. What distinguishes this policy paper that we are presenting today and the larger research project is that it stems from these analyses and studies to analyze the economic situation of the Palestinian territory in order to find new solutions to confront the challenges and to build on ongoing Palestinian debates across the Green Line, which try to resist the compound colonial situation and hegemony by exploring new prospects of cooperation and complementarity. The paper showed that Israeli policies have obstructed economic development and growth in the Palestinian territory and made the Palestinian economy fully dependent on the Israeli economy. As one of the outcomes, it expanded the revenue gap between both economies. The study sheds light on the challenges facing Arab companies in marketing their products in the Palestinian territory and in cooperating with Palestinian organizations. In the face of these challenges and colonial pressure, the paper highlights the prospects of economic cooperation and complementarity between the Palestinians across the Green Line, and reiterates the importance of institutionalization of economic relations and to improve investment in the infrastructure in addition to other recommendations. This is the essence of think tanks and research centers. They diagnose the situation, analyze it, and provide recommendations that may inform the strategies and action plans. And this is what we hope that the paper will achieve, so that decision makers can benefit from the study to turn it into action plans that we can build on. This is the benefits of being in Ramallah and our colleagues who prepared the paper. So I will give the floor to our colleagues in Ramallah. So we're looking forward to see the book. I don't want to pressure you. There is a lot of pipeline going on. Mr. Ahmad Alaouni with Mr. Islam Rabia, who were part of the team of the study. Please share your screen. Hello, everybody. Before my colleague Ahmad starts presenting the platform, which is an interactive platform for an appealing presentation of data, I will speak of the economic relations across the Green Line, and we can cover 4 paradigms. First, there is marketing and sale of final products. Then we have the correlation with the both parties and the elements of production, including raw material and employment. And there are students from inside the Green Line who study in the Palestinian universities. There is a growth in the purchase of products from the Palestinian territory, especially in the West Bank, in the areas close to Al-Muthalat and Galilee, and they are the north of the West Bank. The latest estimates show that these purchases reached $1.5 billion. Regarding the key forms of investment of Arab capital in the West Bank, it was mainly in real estate investment for purchase of land or apartments. The field survey showed that there are investments in production sectors and service sectors. The investments are in the form of partnerships. The field survey showed that 16% of the economic community of the Palestinians inside the Green Line invest in the West Bank, and the surveys showed that it is higher in the West Bank. Regarding the access of Arab installations inside the Green Line of Palestinian labor and raw material, the percentage was high. 23% of the total number of Palestinian enterprises inside the Green Line sell their products inside the Palestinian territory. The highest rate of imports from the Palestinian areas toward the Arab enterprises inside the Green Line was in the food products. The survey showed that many of the Arab enterprises inside the Green Line have a lack of labor, and they agreed to attract Palestinian labor force. Regarding the motives of investment of the Palestinian Arab capital in the West Bank, 30% of the enterprises and installations showed that they have knowledge of the investment environment in the Palestinian territory. And this is a low percentage if we take into account the geographic complementarity and the fact that many of the Palestinians inside the 94th areas come to shop and for shopping in the Palestinian territory. But there is also weak policies and Israeli hegemony. The key positive findings that the factors that motivate investment is the cheap labor and raw material, in addition to cheap establishment cost. We also addressed a number of the challenges that obstruct the promotion of this economic relation. It was the nature of the Israeli economy and the fact that it hegemonizes both economies. There's also the Israeli occupation and the security segregation and cantonization of Palestinian areas. We have challenges also related to the weak investment environment in the Palestinian areas, in addition to the fact that Arab enterprises may have a challenge to have funding from Palestinian banks. There are challenges also related to marketing their products inside the Palestinian territory or across the Green Line. There are the risks related to the flow of investment capital in the Palestinian area. The other challenge was the lack of information and data. Before I give the floor to my colleague Ahmad, I want to speak of the key concerns of the Palestinian capitalists in the PNA areas. The difficulty to have licenses, in addition to logistic impediments. 76% of the enterprises said they did not invest because of security and political reasons, and because of inadequate capital. 55% do not invest in PNA areas because of lack of information about opportunities. And 35% of the enterprises did not invest because of the low purchase power of Palestinian consumers. Now I'll give the floor to Ahmad, who will present the findings of the study via the interactive digital platform. Thank you, Islam, and greetings to you all. Islam has presented the study in words, but I will show you the digital platform regarding the field survey of the study. MAS usually uses modern tools in its economic research. This platform is a different approach because it presents data through interactive figures that facilitate access to users, whether they are decision makers or researchers, to analyze the figures empirically based on the data and options available on the platform. The digital platform is a monitor of the economic situation, and this platform, which was prepared in assessing the Palestinian enterprises inside the Green Line, is complementary to the other platforms regarding social protection, labor force, national accounts, and so on. So this platform is a tool to assess and diagnose the economic context, taking into account the unique questions raised by the study. The platform is not limited to the data uploaded on the platform, but it can also produce analysis, explanations. It can account for the changes, produce several scenarios. It can refer to other studies, regardless of the purpose of the researcher. There is also a quantitative analysis of the situation, taking into account the different changes and variables, and it helps entrepreneurs and investors to understand the different percentages of each sector or geographic area or economic activity. Our platform presents the Palestinian economic enterprises inside the Green Line, and the sample targeted a field survey of 212 Palestinian enterprises that answered 60 questions. The platform integrated about 96% of the questions with the different variables, as you can see in the figures that I'll be presenting per each paradigm. The platform is divided into 4 paradigms. First, the situation of Palestinian enterprises inside the green light regarding their economic and geographic distribution. The second, the challenges, and then the factors that affect the economic activity and the key trade relation. We take the first parameter, we see the figures about the size of each economic activity in addition to the percentages and the number of enterprises representing the sector. To the right-hand side, we see that we can choose based on economic activity or the geographic area, region. If we use a particular activity and the activities that change based on the activity. If we want to speak of real estate, for example, we speak of transformation industries, we speak of wholesale and retail selling. So these are the activities. I can also choose the region or geographic location. I can say Galilee because it was the highest rate of Palestinian enterprises. We can also review the 4 parameters on this platform with the same choices I have or options. So we can choose a variable, an area, and then we go to the second parameter in which we see the challenges facing Palestinian enterprises inside the green line. So these are the same economic activities within the same geographic area. And there is also a sub-search for transformational industries like manufacturing of computers and so on. But if we speak of the quantitative findings of the study, we select all economic activities in all the areas covered by the study. We noticed that the largest volume was for the first parameter about the context of Palestinian enterprises, and regarding their economic activity, there was the highest was transformational industries and wholesale and retail. The highest was for transformational and whole, in addition to the challenges and the other variables regarding the difficulties to attract labor force and the reasons behind the lack of marketing of products inside the Palestinian areas, in addition to the lack of labor and expansion of capitals in Israeli markets and other forms that you can find on the platform. I will now cover the third parameter, which are the factors that may motivate economic activity. We speak of the needs of enterprises in terms of development and expansion, and those inside the Israeli areas and the PN areas. These are data represented in figures. There is a lot of information here that you can see. And it shows the percentages here on the figures. We speak of the investment environment in the Palestinian areas, and it decreases based on the activities and their distribution according to the regions. The last parameter addresses the economic relations and the trade between Palestinians across the green line. Is there subcontracting with Palestinian companies in the PNA areas? All is distributed in a relative relationship based on the economic activity and the region. Finally, these data will be updated continually so that it will be available and usable for future years, and to be updated source of data for all researchers and decision makers. Thank you. Thank you to both researchers. I believe that this is a good start and a very useful summary for those who ask for many figures, tables, statistics. You can find them here. Now I will give the floor to comment. First, Dr. Ihab, to focus on, probably you've seen the platform, but you have not seen the study. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Raja. Thank you for this kind invitation and for the Arab Center for Policy and Research Studies. Thank you to MAS. I am very happy with this project. Before I speak of data and the platform, I read the draft report and that draft book as well. So I'm happy with this study. And most importantly, the study reminded me that we as social scientists and economic researchers, we need Mass Institute and the Arab Center for Research, because we know that in the past 10 or 20 years, there were many studies on the Palestinian economy, especially labor force inside Israel. But I believe that this question was not asked. And now Mass has opened the floor for this discussion and invites all social scientists and economic researchers to address this important issue that has not been sufficiently studied. So Mass is always a frontier and it opens the doors and we enter through these gates to start delving further into the topics. So it is, I believe, an authentic study and it's an eye-opening and cooperation between the Palestinian economies to both sides of the Green Line. I will speak very quickly of some of the recommendations. I looked at the platform. It's wonderful. Since I read the first draft of the book and looked at the platform, I could find about 60 to 70% of the content of the book in the platform. So the platform is summarizing an image that summarizes 1,000 words. So it is an active and effective summary of the most important points mentioned by the book and the study. Thank you for this effort. I will comment on a final point. We should not stop here. I believe that this is a very important issue, and this is an invitation to the Arab Center for Research, to Mass, to pursue this important partnership and to complete the project. I believe that the project still needs further efforts. We need to expand the sample. As our colleagues said, their sample had 212 enterprises or installations. I believe that this is a relatively small sample and it is possible to expand it. So I think that we need to pursue this effort for the next years, not only regarding the sample, but the questions that will be asked to the different enterprises and installations. Probably one of the questions was a question about Palestinian labor force in the Palestinian enterprises inside the Green Line. It was not a clear question. It was not about the number of workers in these enterprises. It was, are you willing to attract or employ Palestinian labor force? And 60% answered yes, but we still don't know the percentage of Palestinian workers inside these Arab enterprises. So we don't know. So there are some questions which I wanted to focus on as a researcher. So I believe that it is important to share the questionnaire with the researchers. Probably this will help us find further questions for future research purposes. So this is an invitation to continue this partnership and effort. I don't think that the partnership should stop at the production of the study or book. We need several years of partnership and time series. Having time series to expand the sample and to continue with the sample of the baseline, this will be important as well. The findings to me are new. I did not know that. So findings help explore, and we have a fair understanding of the nature of this relationship. And I believe that this is important. We as citizens, we know that on Saturday, the markets in the West Bank are different because there are Palestinians from inside the Green Line. But this is what we knew. But we did not have accurate information about the relationship between the different economic enterprises. And the exports of Palestinian enterprises inside the Green Line and vice versa, or the labor movement, or the elements of production. So we raised the study And we praise the study because it is the first study that enabled us to explore this. Have we seen these figures? 27%. Does it express complementary relationship or strong relationship? We still cannot tell for two reasons. First, it is a small sample and we don't have a benchmark. And we have no baseline to compare. So personally, I will not leave this question. I will discuss it more to read what you do as well. And I'm happy to contribute to this effort, but I believe that it's very important. What matters is that now we view Palestinian labor force inside the Green Line with the eye of problems. Because when we assessed the level of Palestinian workers inside Israel, it was based on the labor supply data and labor demand from Israel. But I believe that we need to have a more in-depth analysis because it is affected by the type of relationship that is established among Palestinian enterprises on both sides. So if there are many exports from one side to another, this may affect the balance of payments. So I believe that this relationship will open several doors and help us understand the Palestinian market and to what extent it depends on the Israeli market. I believe that my time is up. Thank you for the study. Thank you very much, Ayham. But you laid a burden upon us because we have ideas. And now Mr. Ahmed al-Sheikh will take it from here because the first survey of enterprises in which they take part, but they have other surveys, including a socioeconomic survey that is done once every 5 years. So it is important for the promotion and to renew these surveys. Thank you. And we need to pursue this cooperation. Yes, we're happy with this cooperation. Dr. Ahmed al-Sheikh, have you joined us? Can you hear me now? Yes. Mr. Ahmed al-Sheikh, the floor is yours. I apologize for being late. I have just logged in the meeting, but I will address the study from a perspective of what can be done in the future. The study is good. It is a blessed initiative. We were able to gather data on both sides of the Green Line. But I also heard to what you said, Mr. Rajih, about the socioeconomic survey we do, which we implement every 4 to 5 years, and it is the 5th series. We are currently implementing the 6th one, which will collect data on the private sector, family, individuals in several areas. Without expanding on these areas, there are other researches relating to special problems. The most recent was the youth research, in which we published data on youth aspirations for the future and their challenges. Based on these studies, I wanted to give you an idea of the Palestinian society inside the Green Line. And I believe that many of you know the characteristics of this community or society, but very quickly I will give you an idea to tell you what we are talking about. The population of Palestinian residents inside the Green Line of 1920 is 1.6 million, and this is different from what is published by the Israeli official statistics, where they speak of almost 2 million. Our figure does not include Jerusalem or occupied Golan. In order to correct the statistics, it is 17.3.2% and not 20% that it is being said. And we have to be careful about the use of statistics. The population are distributed across geographic areas, and I will take the traditional areas in our Palestinian culture. We have about 20% in Negev, 330,000. Al-Muthallath, which represents about 28%, and it's 44,000. And the largest percentage in the Galilee area with 52%, with about 830,000 people. If we look at the age groups, we have 40% of the society are below 18. Our society is still young compared to the European societies or the Israeli society in general. We, in the labor market, we have age 18 to 64%, about 56%, and we have 5% age 65 and above, and this percentage will change based on the demographic changing that is taking place inside the Palestinian society, inside the green line, because the other demographic indicators show that there is lower fertility among Arab women to 2.8. It used to be 3.8 per 1,000 women. So the average age is increasing, and now we speak of 24 years, but a decade ago it was almost 20. So the mean age, the size of household is decreasing, and our demographic growth is 2% in the last year. And to your surprise, for the first time, we have a demographic growth rate which is lower than the Jewish community. We have to take this into account. When we review the situation in the labor market, we notice that participation in the labor market today, based on official statistics, is 41 to 42%, which includes women and men, 53% women and 28% women. For the group age 65 and above, the percentage is lower. It's 2 to 2.5% for male and 5.7% male and 2.5% women. If we look at the situation in the Jewish society, it's 76%. In the overall statistics among female, it's 64%. For the age group 65 and 4, there is a level of participation of 30%. And here the differences appear in the participation of the Arabs and the Israelis. If we look at the main occupations, this is an introduction to any subsequent intervention. 22% are in academic professions. The majority of the academic profession is among women, about 43% of the Palestinian labor force, including women. Trade and services come in a good place, about 20% of women, including 31%. And for handicrafts, it's an average of 30%, mostly among male, 46%. If we look at the different economic branches, we notice that manufacturing and construction is 15.1%, trade and reparation 15.3%, and education 14.2%. There's a difference between men and women in these economic areas, and we notice that about 25% of men work in construction, and 32% of women work in education, 23% in welfare. The issue of education, we have a breakthrough in the levels of education, but there is concern that the percentage of women who go to academia and who have a BA and higher is twice. I speak of the age group 18 to 35 years old. If we look at the revenue of Arab families, we have 10,000 shekels per month compared to 17 shekels in the Jewish community, and these are huge differences. Less than 2/3. The Arab households make less than 2/3 of what the Jewish families make. So we have high poverty rates, although it is decreasing in last years. It's about 42% now. If we look at the objective in a positive version, those who define themselves as poor are 52%, but it is different in the Jewish community. It is 17%. In the subject, it's 17%. Regarding the study, I reviewed world economic models that try to develop an ecosystem. I divided the findings according to this theory, which covers several parts, including policy, marks, human capital, support, culture, and finance. All these are the support that will come from these sectors. At the level of public policies, we all agree that Israel does not want to change its public policies and aims to keep the Palestinians in general on both sides of the Green Line as a dependent society. So they deal with us as a society that is dependent on the Israeli economy. We do not have any economic independence. And I believe that this is a long path that needs huge and large steps. And we have to start now, since a study like this one will enable us to lay the foundation for the development of an internal Palestinian economy and a Palestinian economy on the other side. We all suffer from the Israeli policies based on their higher ideology. We are succumbed to the day-to-day changing developments, and this affects the economic policies applied by Israel and how they are implemented. There are restrictions on trade with the Palestinian territory. There are restrictions on how we use Palestinian products or how we purchase services from the Palestinian area. I'll give, for example, the law on reparation of vehicles. According to the law, it is forbidden for a Palestinian from inside the Green Line to go into the Palestinian areas to repair their vehicles. There is a spread of industrial estates for Jewish communities next to the Arab cities. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the official institution took the initiative to establish industrial estate, but it gave licenses to Jewish towns next to the Arab towns, and we suffer from this now because the reason behind the creation of these industrial estates next to Arab towns, they tell you there is an industrial estate, why should we establish one for the Arab areas? There are restrictions on Palestinian labor. Today, we can establish a body to care for the Arab labor on both sides of the Green Line. So there needs to be a body that is twin to another body inside the PNA areas so that we can help the Palestinian labor force to enter into the Green Line areas. At the level of Palestinian policies and the Palestinian Authority, I believe that it is necessary to give some legal facilities, although it is a double-edged weapon, and we have to take these concerns into account. The Israeli government may abuse of these for malicious reasons. So we must be very careful about the policies we propose. We need to mitigate bureaucracy and formalities in the PNA areas. I remember in the focus groups, I noticed that there is high bureaucracy at the Palestinian level, and they have to be mitigated in order to give facilities to the investors from the areas inside the Green Line. It is necessary to create a supportive regulatory framework, including improving the investment environment. It is necessary to give tax exemptions and facilities to encourage investors from inside the Green Line to establish a factory or to invest in the PNA areas. I believe that it is also necessary to institutionalize the relationships with the areas inside the Green Line is through think tanks that can give recommendations on how to consolidate this relationship. Excuse me for, I have a minute to summarize. We have to start presenting the recommendations, and then I will give you the floor to follow up. So try to conclude. There's also investment in the infrastructure, industrial estates. I have to speak of the market and building a trust between the Palestinian society inside at both sides. I believe that there are certain barriers that need to be broken and to build a relationship between both sides. There is a lack of trust which continues to exist, unfortunately, between both sides of the Green Line. I have to speak of the human resources, and they were not part of the recommendations. So we can discuss it. We still have not presented the recommendations, so keep these useful comments to the end. I will give you the floor after we present the recommendations. Thank you. Dr. Rabeh may start presenting the recommendations so that we keep the same pace. We will give you the floor after we present the recommendations. Thank you. Good afternoon. After this presentation by the previous speakers, as you know, the study is extensive with several chapters. This is a policy paper in which we try to summarize the policy-related recommendations. But in the study, there is more. Some of the studies were mentioned by Ahmed, but we know that in any economic relation, we have good figures, whether it be companies with investment in the West Bank, joint economic relations. But what consolidates all the findings of the study is the fact that the economic relationship is not built on clear frameworks and bases. It is a kind of haphazard relationship, which is fragmented, depends on personal relations, family kinship, rather than being institutionalized. The figures, according to the findings of the study, I believe are good, but we need to build on them. To build on them, there are a number of interventions that should start at the government level first. We know that the Arabs of Israel and most of their economic relationship goes from inside the Green Line to the Palestinian area, but we need this flow of capital from inside the Green Line into the West Bank. The main role of the government is to institutionalize and organize this relationship and view it as a strategic objective. If the Palestinian decision makers are not convinced that the economic relation is further than thousands of shoppers who come every Saturday and then go home, it will be difficult to establish this economic complementarity. So this relationship must be viewed as a strategic objective and a strategic dimension of the Palestinian economy. And it is important to replace the imports, the largest part of which comes through Israel. We need to support the channels of economic complementarity between the Palestinians across the Green Line. We know the impediments laid by Israel, the occupation, but we also need to exert further effort and prepare plans. We have the Investment Promotion Authority and other relevant organizations that should establish a vision on how to attract Arab capital from inside the Green Line. And we can deal with many of the challenges mentioned by the studies and find solutions. For example, the question of trust and dealing with the infractions, whether it be at the level of dealing at the individual level or at the company level. Based on the findings of the study, we found out that the chambers of commerce play an important role in dealing with these problems, but it is necessary to have a legal vision or a legal intervention by concerned parties in Palestine. The investment environment, whether it be for investments inside the Green Line or in general, the investment environment in Palestine is full of challenges. for foreign investment as well as investment from Palestinians inside the Green Line. But in the case of investments from the Arabs of Israel, the main challenge is registration of land and property. We know that the Palestinian government fears the leak of land for settlement purposes or the question of money laundering, but it is necessary to have an intervention to find a solution, even for those from inside Jerusalem. Some residents of Jerusalem say that they face the same problem, that they cannot register the land in their name if they have investment, or that they have to have a partner from the West Bank. Sometimes they don't need a partner, but they have to get a partner for the question of ownership of land. So this needs intervention. We need to mitigate the restrictions and delay of registration of investment from across the land, in addition to tax exemptions and the privilege, as well as banking facilities. We noticed that there are some banking facilities, but the percentage from the West Bank was almost nil. So it appears that the Palestinian banking sector has a problem to open up to the market inside Israel. So I believe that this also needs further interventions from the Palestinian Monetary Authority. We need to establish a government unit to follow up on the economic problems and handle them regarding registration, licensing, financial transactions, tax exemptions. It is also important to invest in the infrastructure, which was a major problem. We know that the industrial estates are there, but they have not been working, especially the border areas like the industrial area engineer, and they can play a role. Some of the papers at Mass showed that there are Israeli industrial estates that have large economic activities of Palestinians and relationship with Jewish investors. So these industrial estates play a major role, and they have to be fully used to attract further investment from Arab capital inside the Green Line. The major problem regarding attraction of investment through the interviews and the focus groups with businessmen inside the Green Line, where to invest, what sectors to invest in, what are the investment opportunities. All of this is not there. We don't have any government body that has a database for any investor who comes from inside the Green Line to where to invest. Most of them go to the real estate sector because purchase of apartments or villa in Jericho, because it is low risk sector and the opportunities of investment are visible. For the other sectors, they don't know anything about industry, agriculture. So here we need a database to highlight the investment opportunities that can attract this capital. Some businessmen have expressed their interest in cooperating with Palestinian capitalists, but we don't know anything about the situation or what is there in the Palestinian market. Most of the information is about the shopping or direct trade. We have recommendations for the organizations inside the Green Line. For the private sector, it is important to have a joint businessman body from both sides to explore investment opportunities, especially in the economic sectors, which we as Palestinians believe that are very important to us. We have tourism, industry, agriculture, and IT sector. And we have seen the Israeli high-tech and how it is investing in our experts. We need to promote Palestinian partnership, and this was part of the areas where we have high potential. So the Arab high-tech sector can be the middle link between both economies. It is important to organize exhibitions to promote industrial products on both sides of the green line, and this can play an important role to help the business community inside the green line to understand the products needed, what are the products available locally, and establish a kind of gateway for investment opportunities. Employment of labor, and Dr. Ayham raised that question. There was a huge discussion on this issue. Why didn't we raise that question directly? Do you have Palestinian workers or not? They said we cannot ask the question directly because most of the Palestinian workers inside Israel do not have the necessary permits. So it is a problem to declare that they have this number of workers without permits, and this could be a problem. So this was by Al-Galili organization to see about the possibility of employing workers, but not asking about the numbers of workers. We have spoken of the strategies, which are not related only to the government sector, but also the private sector and the chambers of commerce that must play an important role here. Thank you. Thank you for this very important project carried out by MAS, Al-Galil Association, and the Study Center in Doha. I will elaborate more on the recommendations regarding the Palestinian private sector and the Palestinian enterprises inside the Green Line. Here we are speaking of cooperation across the Green Line, and this cooperation depends on the Israeli policies. The Israeli economic policies vis-à-vis Palestinians inside the Green Line and in the 1967 areas. So Israel applies separate economic policies to the Palestinians. So it has also the settler colonization policies in the areas occupied in 1967. In both cases, Israel wants to keep the Palestinian economy on both sides dependent on its economy, and to keep the Israeli economy as the hegemonist economy, from which both economies will import services, products, capital, and so on. So we're not working in a lab environment where we as Palestinians on both sides of the Green Line can do whatever we want at the economic level. It is clear that we can diagnose the economic situation and review the tools available, but they will be monitored and dependent on the Israeli policies. On the other hand, in spite of all these policies and the existing situation and the lack of institutions and follow-up by the Palestinian government, official level, and in the absence of institutionalization of these economic relations, we speak of a $1.5 billion cooperation without the Palestinian labor inside the Green Line. Palestinian workers moving from the areas occupied in 1967 to the areas occupied in 1948. So without any intervention, we speak of a huge level of economic cooperation. It is not huge, but it is not small. So this important research conducted by both organizations, there was a study by Mada Al-Kamel at the individual level. It was a survey on consumption. This complements the parts related to trust, consuming, and purchase. And this raises interest of research organizations. But there is another point, and it is an important hypothesis. When I read the data, 212 enterprises inside the Green Line, it is not a small sample. We speak of large enterprises, speaking of their capital, number of workers, and so on. So we speak of 90% of the total economic enterprises, because most of the enterprises inside the Green Line are small and medium-sized. So they employ a small number of workers. So Galilee Center tried to cover all areas, and they went into the different areas. They entered into the different Arab areas to collect the data, and this is very good. Even the research tool. So inside the Green Line, we don't have any official statistics on the Palestinian industrial sector inside the Green Line. So have something on the different disaggregation of economic data into industry, agriculture, and so on. We don't have this. So the hypothesis of work, even on both sides of the Green Line, we speak of different political fates of those in the areas occupied in 1948 or 1967, because the hypothesis was that the Palestinians inside Israel will have to make the best of their life with the state of Israel. But this is changing, and the hypothesis here may reshuffle the economic structure, because based on the findings of the survey, there is will and intention, but what we don't have is institutionalization of our act. Inside the Green Line, we do not have economic institutions or any institutions. The civil society, we don't have like other parts of Palestine. Therefore, it is important that the local authorities inside the Green Line play a role. Because the major role will be by the local authorities, because they are the only formal organization that we have. So these are the therefore, I speak of the recommendations for the private sector, but it's not organized inside the Green Line, and there is no cooperation. We also have a characteristic which is different from the other areas. We don't have public equities or public shareholders. We don't have holding companies. We don't have banks or insurance companies. We don't have investment companies. Most of the companies active in the economy are either family businesses or private shareholding. We don't have public equities where there is exchange and stocks and so on. So it is important that we try to build cooperation between the Palestinian banking sector, and there are limitations because any bank needs collaterals and guarantees. If they want to disperse a loan, they need a collateral. So also for the insurance companies, they are forbidden from working inside Israel. The Israeli law prevents them, and the same applies to the Palestinian banking sector, but it will not prevent a Palestinian company from having an account in a Palestinian bank. So here there's a role that the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian Monetary Authority and Ministry of Economy can play to find the necessary tools to provide the necessary guarantees for the Palestinian banks to make them open more to the economy of Palestine inside the Green Line. The other impediment to cooperation is the economic structure of on both sides is similar. The industries inside the Green Line are similar to those. They're most in traditional industries. So these are the, for example, textile, garment, and yes, there's more diversification in the areas occupied in 1967. Their ability to export is higher and to compete is higher. So as Mr. Raja said, there is more competition rather than complementary relation, and therefore we need to take this aspect into account. But what matters is to encourage both sides. But there is also the political part that impedes any investment of the Palestinians inside the 1967 areas inside us. So we want the investment to be both ways. So it could be larger, and the sector in which we need to work, and this has to be organized and institutionalized. And international trade is the question of modern techniques and high tech. because this is easier. You don't need large institutes or infrastructures. The main investment is human capital. So there needs to be cooperation between the education sector and, but this sector can be used, and this has to be sponsored by the Palestinian government. The other sector is important. There has to be diversification of tourism because there is a convenient economic aspect for Palestinian consumers from inside the Green Line. But there is also the national dimension that plays a role, even regarding daily purchase. It cannot be segregated from the economic part because Palestinians inside the Green Line can be expanded. And for medical services, that can also expand and increase the opportunities available to Palestinians inside the Green Line to benefit from the Palestinian universities. For example, in medicine, 90% of those who study at Abu Dis or Nablus University pass the Israeli Health Ministry's board exam. Better than those graduates of Eastern European universities. So we could benefit from this supply and demand in academia as well. Thank you to all the commentators. I know that there are but we want to listen to Mr. Muhammad Al-Amour, coordinator of from the Coordinating Council. We have in Mother Yunus, we need to listen to Amin Sharat, who is the economic advisor of the committee. I will give you the final word, Mr. Amir, and now we will listen to the presentation and comment of Mr. Muhammad Al-Amour. Thank you. Doctor. Good afternoon to all of you and to our colleagues on behalf of the Coordinating Council of the Palestinian Private Sector. Because some of you are joining us via Zoom, I will give you a quick presentation of this Coordinating Council. It comprises 13 economic institutions that covers the economic activities in associations and unions. 13 umbrella organizations of all economic activities in the Palestinian areas, in the state of Palestine. As of the Federation of Chambers of Commerce, the Federation of Industries, the Businessmen Union, and Paltrade, which is the Palestinian Trade Center, that is focusing on promoting Palestinian exports, and they play an important role in this relationship with our Palestinian part inside the Green Line, in addition to the Union of Contractors, Union of Shippers, Union of Banks, insurance companies, and many other organizations that play a role in the economic activity in Palestine. Regarding our topic today, on behalf of the Coordinating Council, we wish to thank Mass Institute and other partners working on the study, and those who are working on this important issue. It is known that the Palestinian population is in 3 areas. There's the Palestinian diaspora, where the Palestinian people are spread across the world, either in camps or in host countries. In the state of Palestine, that is the 1967 areas, the areas occupied in 1967, and the other part is the 1948 areas. Our people and those who support our Palestinian life, regardless of the fact that they live under Israeli sovereignty. The other part regarding Palestinian in the diaspora, I will not be speaking about it. It is important to connect the Palestinian people inside Palestine with those in the diaspora, and this will be a topic for another discussion. Probably MAS can also work on this. And PLO as well, which is the main representative of the Palestinian people wherever they are, including inside the areas occupied in 1948. I had to give this introduction because I believe that it is important that we be aware of this information, and we need to shed light on the composition of the Palestinian people. It is important we speak of the Palestine Liberation Organization, which has an economic department, and a core activity of this department must be this type of relationship. The Palestinian government has a Ministry of National Economy, which also showed a focus on this issue that is presented here. But if we shed light at this area, is better than concealing things and not raising them at all. It could be a message to all of those concerned with this. We need to reconsider and rethink of these important issues, which I believe will consolidate Palestinian affairs in all different areas, and it is as important as establishing a state, because if you want to establish a state, you need to gather all your population, and these are the main components of a state. The other point in the study, it is a highly praised study. Its importance stems from the audacious approach. And here I will address some of the key parameters as much as possible. I will be as frank as possible, but I will not speak of the statistics in the study about labor, trade exchange, where they work, and so on. I will say the following. First point, the importance of this economic relationship between the West Bank and the areas occupied in 1948. This is something that we must agree on, and it is something taken for granted, because when you speak of border areas, Jenin, Nablus, Hebron, I say Jerusalem as border area as well. If you don't have a main supplier to the economy from our people, it will be a difficult situation. I was in Jenin a while ago, one of the restaurants in which there are huge investments, probably 10 stars, is empty because the relationship at this moment, this political conjuncture and security conjuncture, is stopped, and all these investments are failing. So we need to have support here. So this is one point. We agree on this. The other point about the limitations that may cover this, which is the concerns regarding Israeli leakage into this relation or sneaking into the relation. If we say register the land deed, let's say the Palestinian government, yes, they're not making effort in many areas, but if they leave a free ownership of land, especially in area C and other areas, this has to have limitations and restrictions, because we don't want to end up starting to serve noble goals and end up in a situation where it could be further normalization and usurpation of land. So we need to be cautious here and present a detailed study from a national perspective with all stakeholders, because the private sector on here and with the other side will not specify this relationship, whether it will be registered or not. What do you register? How do you produce a deed, and so on, and economic partnerships. So all parties must be around the table so that every party will take their share of responsibility. The other part was the investment climate. I'm speaking of investment climate here. Is it generally, not only for the Palestinians inside the Green Line, is it attractive? Or is it an investment climate that needs further improvement. We, as Union of Palestinian Business Men, proposed and received the agreement of the Council of Ministers. We say we organize huge conferences for businessmen, Palestinians, and others to invest here. We have another viewpoint. We want conferences of businessmen inside the Green Line and 1967, those inside Palestine, to examine the investment climate and to see whether it is attractive or appalling, and what are the factors before we go to other countries and other economic sectors. The protocols relating to investment, how can we change the laws, how can we try to improve the political environment, and the things relating to the regulatory framework, are they changing, are they constant, what are the details? Many things need to be viewed, and this is a message to all stakeholders to reconsider the internal investment environment, not only in terms of relationship among the Palestinian people. The other point, the industrial areas or states. As some of the speakers said, we have 3 or 4 industrial estates, some that have been for 20 years without any progress, and Dr. Hassan was following up on this progress. The industrial estate engineer, and then the current Minister of National Economy had the same idea, and he said, when I came to this position, I went to the industrial estate engineering and I only saw the banner showing this estate. So we need to focus on this from the beginning, but it seems that there are still other impediments that we as businessmen and private sector, we don't know. To establish these areas, the industrial estates will be the incubator of investment, because investment in any country without industry is useless. We don't want only to depend on service-based economy, provide me a service here or there, and bring in tuna from Thailand and sardines from Brasilia. No, we want real investment that creates job opportunities and transformational industries that are alternative industries to what we import. So the industrial estates are very important. The other point about the concerns raised about normalization of relationships and Israeli sneaking into our land. So we need to think together how to minimize these things and to give direct questions to all these points. So there are organizations that represent them and so on. The main recommendation, we need to the best possible reconcile these different bodies in to speak with one voice and one representative before third parties. The other point, we have the follow-up committee and the regional committee. I personally believe, and I could be wrong or right, these committees are the political cover for our people inside the Green Line, and this cover must be mobilized with government bodies here, and we as businessmen and the Palestinian private sector, with all love and support, are willing to launch this cooperation and to extend this cooperation beyond 4 or 5 buses that come for shopping in Nablus or in East Jerusalem or in Jenin, to institutionalization of the relation, but we need a body. Therefore, I suggest that this regional committee and the government have a body, and the private sector is willing, under these frameworks and limitations of this cooperation and coordination, and for this joint investment. It was mentioned that the political framework was different, the vision was different. There is a population under the governance of the State of Israel, which is a de facto government. Here we were hoping to establish an independent Palestinian state on the 4th of June borders, but it seems that this dream is evaporating. Therefore, we with the other Palestinians inside Palestine share the same fate, and therefore we need to change our strategies and visions. What matters is to start. We need a committee that is responsible, because if you work on retail pieces here and there, they will have fragmented results. And the last point, the Palestinian private sector is willing to cooperate with our people, the representatives of businessmen inside the Green Line, to serve the interest of the Palestinian people on both sides. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. To the question of institutionalization, I suggest to be an initiative of the private sector. Do not wait for the local authorities or any other entities. The private sector can establish a chamber of commerce, a joint chamber of commerce, Palestinian. Now we give the last comment to Mr. Amir. Are you there? Mr. Amir, please, who is the economic advisor to the regional committee, and the committee is an elected body or represents elected bodies. The follow-up committee with whom we cooperated in the capacity building conference is more of political representation, but both bodies play an important role. Mr. Amir? Yes. Mr. Amir, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, MAS and the Arab Center for Research. I am representative of the regional committee on behalf of lawyer Mohamed Yunus, the president of this committee. I will take up the points mentioned by Mr. Al-Amour. I believe that we need to have a relationship between both parties together with the local authorities in both sides, as well as businessmen. We have many things to learn from you at the level of Palestinian businessmen inside the Green Line, and there could be networking and cooperation. I will address a few points. First, in general, the regional committee represents 60 local authorities inside the Green Line in Negev, South, North, and the towns, the Bedouin areas, as well as Negev areas, the Arab villages in the Jewish regional councils, and members of the local councils in the mixed cities. So it represents all Arab citizens in the country. And as Ahmed mentioned, based on our definition of the Arabs inside Israel, but we have several weaknesses as heads of local authorities. We still do not have sufficient networking, and I saw that this was part of the recommendations. There need to be further coordination between the local authorities and businesswomen. There is individual contact, so I believe that this is the role of the local authorities, the Arab local authorities inside the Green Line. And here I will speak of the question of government budgets, and it was one of the recommendations of the paper, but I have to speak of the three economic paths that a local authority inside the Green Line must adopt. First, we need to promote the household economy. We speak about 80% of Arab local authorities are part of the economy. So the economic situation of the households is limited. Increase employment and development of new work areas of citizens inside the local authorities, and there is a role played by the official organizations to suppress any initiative of local authorities to establish new industrial estates. Only 4% of the industrial estates, or the arnona, that is the tax paid to local authorities is actually collected by these authorities, although 17% of we represent 17% of Israel and 14.4% of the local authorities inside Israel, but only 4% of these taxes are paid to these authorities. So this is systematic attack against them in order to prevent the establishment of any industries in the Arab areas, and this will have repercussions on the level of employment across the local authorities and the taxes collected by these authorities. So both parties, as well as families, if they have two people working and there is low economic level and there is low economic level at the level of the local authority as well as the family. The other point is to develop trade relations by increasing the purchase power in the country and developing public facilities, in addition to aesthetics of the city that may attract people from abroad, and digital sale or online sale. I see possible cooperation among Palestinians on both sides across the Green Line, but there could be also a digital relationship for a huge trade. And this role, we need to focus on economic companies, whether local or in the area. There could be a joint between both parts. The economic companies that work together to develop economic relationships and to improve the purchase power when they bring in buses to shop in Jenin or vice versa, or come inside the Green Line or work. This kind can be through economic companies. This is part one. I will address one of the recommendations in the study regarding the economic companies. Do you have an estimate of how many economic companies for how many councils? Because they are allowed in the Israeli law, and they can be. There are 4 economic companies or corporations in the Arab towns that is representing the local authorities in Al-Fahim, Kufr Qasim, Rafat, and Khura, and Shafamir was establishing an economic company. So between 4 to 5 economic companies, that is still very few, but the Israeli authorities allow for the establishment of an economic company, or if there are economic opportunities that are huge to legitimize this. So if there is an economic visibility, so the Ministry of Interior will approve the creation of these companies. One of the recommendations regarding government budgets, and I agree with it, although part of my work in the regional committee is to follow up on the government resolutions 550, the decision on the socio-economic development of the Arab community. By 2026, it is worth 30 billion shekels for 5 years. However, all the tools and mechanisms, policies used by the different Israeli ministries are not to bridge the gaps, but to give a kind of economic first aid to the local authorities and citizens without leaving room for possible struggle against the Israeli institutions. So it's like to keep our head on top of the water, where we don't fully drown, and when there isn't dire poverty for all segments of the Arab society. So it is not the most appropriate solution to bridge the gaps. We do not depend only on the government budgets. The government budgets and policies do not provide us with full potential to establish an economy that is independent of the official organization. All the budgets are the remaining part of the budget of the Ministry of Interior in order to provide services to citizens, but we don't have any economic independence for any of the local authorities. And even the recent legislation which aim on paper to reduce the gap actually serve the local authorities in the settlements and those of the Jewish Orthodox communities and not the Arab communities. This regards the budget of the government and that we should not depend on them. You spoke of the businessmen forums. Some of the local authorities established forums of businessmen, but we still need to learn from the chambers of commerce and the Palestinian society occupied in 1968. You have united chambers of commerce, and they know how to work with the ministries better than the enterprises in the area occupied in 1948. Therefore, the local authorities inside the Green Line try to assign a representative to the businessmen forums in order to follow up on economic trends, interests regarding tourism, increase of purchase power, digital sale, online trade, and many other issues. So I invite you to learn from the experience of the Palestinian society with regard to chambers of commerce. May you be brief because there are questions. I also wish to invite you to focus on twinning of local authorities. There were calls to have a twin local authority. So let's have this twinning relation between local authorities on both sides, especially regarding the budgets that may come from abroad and serve both parties for cultural, educational, and other projects that can also promote the relationship between both parts and improve their economy. I received a person from Bethlehem who wanted to apply for the European Union proposal, and he needed a town inside the Green Line. It was first difficult to establish this network, but then it was possible to establish a network between Al-Fahim and Bethlehem. So I call for this cooperation. There are many budgets allocated for this kind of goals. We in the regional committee, if there is a contact person at the Palestinian Authority, we can contact him and establish these networks. Thank you, Amir. We will be the link in the chain as well. There are things coming, but we're still doing things slowly. I will give regarding the participants on the webinar, you may raise your hand or write in the chat. Give us a signal that you want to speak. Other than those in the room, those on Zoom. Please give me a sign here. I will come back to Ahmed al-Sheikh later. Dr. Hassan Abu Lebdi, Mr. Bassam. So we take a round of 3 comments. I don't usually praise people, but I have to. I want to extend deep gratitude to Mas et al. This is a subject that's close to our hearts. I don't think that it is a good title. The title is not Prospects of Cooperation. We are not 2 states, 2 peoples. We are one people divided because of the occupation and political mismanagement in both cases. Therefore, I was hoping to have a title of the requirements of cooperation, not prospects of cooperation. I support what the commentator said. A large part of the Israeli strategy is to prevent the potential of this cooperation because there is a lot of synergy and so on. In terms of relationship with the Palestinians inside the Green Line, you cannot avoid the political entry point, even in the economy, social relations, culture, and so on. Our strategy on both sides of the green line must be to consolidate this relationship in all areas. Based on this workshop, I was hoping that it is to raise the awareness of the Palestinian Authority, because it seems that they don't know that there are Palestinians inside the Green Line and that they represent 30% of the Palestinians in historic Palestine. 30% can shoulder any economy if they have appropriate circumstances. Now you're speaking of this, of weak or even non-existent contributions. So I will not raise any negative comment regarding the PNA, which does not have the time to seize this historic moment, that there are intellectuals and activists on both sides who feel the problem and sense the potential, and they do nothing. So this is important. So political will is not here. It is an important paper to consolidate the inter-Palestinian cooperation. It is an important political card that can be used and have a huge influence. So I hope that the recommendations also say that the PNA should do this and that, but it doesn't seem to be here. So I hope that there can be a discussion about continuing Palestinian discussion and the pressure to adopt the resolutions to create a platform that enables this unit to be functional on the ground. There must be a second part. I did not read the full study. I blame Raja, who didn't give me the study enough time in advance, but I hope that there can be detailed presentation of what the Palestinians here should do to translate their Palestinian identity in terms of their relationship with the Palestinians inside the Green Line, including, for example, the platform that was presented is great, but we need a similar platform to create the possibility of raising awareness, knowledge, readiness of Palestinians inside the Green Line to come here. I don't think that the geopolitics in the country will allow us to have symmetric cooperation. Therefore, it's clear the Palestinians inside the Green Line can either expand their investment or migrate into the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And I believe that this will promote our steadfastness and Palestinian collective identity. It will enable the Palestinians inside the Green Line to spread more in other economies, although Abraham agreements restrict this possibility. And it will be very good that part of the outcome of this effort is to have ongoing efforts and activities to transform this academic exercise into daily practice that shows every Palestinian here and inside the Green Line and in the diaspora that you cannot avoid that everybody exerts enough efforts to preserve the Palestinian identity and the Palestinian question, and the only solution to this is the Palestinian consolidation of relationships. So there must be all of these activities. This absent PNA needs pressure. If there is political will, there will be special incentives for all Palestinians inside the Green Line. Welcome. It's not that if they want to establish a company, they create all the hurdles. We know that. In addition to this, I don't think it's wrong that the PA says that every Palestinian inside the Green Line or in the diaspora have protected investments, fully protected. How can we support our single economic, social, and political identity without that? Mr. Ahmad, for the information there. And I hope that we can all see this information. Palestinians inside Israel are not just a figure and are in Israel. They are a full entity that is waiting to become more official as a minority in the state of Israel and as a wing of the state of Palestine. A final word. Like Israel brings settlers from across the world and they give them all the incentives on earth. Land, electricity, water, and they say, sit with your with the wild animals on top of the mountain. Let's do the same for the Palestinians inside the Green Line. They come here and sit among the wild animals, but then they are shot. So here the PA and the PLO, if it still exists, they must have a clear position vis-a-vis them. Are they part of us? Are they an economic lever or not? Are they important or not? Other than that, all your efforts will go futile. Mr. Bassam, please. Thank you. First of all, based on what Hassan and the other speakers said, I don't like to delve into details and studies. Our people inside the Green Line, we want to study and review and see this. Why? Sometimes I am astonished. We are touring the world, whether we be businessmen, ministries want to establish relationship with the Netherlands, with Egypt. Nationally speaking, we cannot do without Egypt, but Arab countries, Western countries. So we are focusing on all this, and we cannot say we want to. Let's not say not 1967, but let's not say that we should have focused on this is 1967, 1993. I'm sure that there is a sovereign decision by the PLO and the president of the state of Palestine to promote this relationship, and it is there in our meetings, and we used to go and do that. But the problem here is why in the cabinets, I'm not speaking of this particular cabinet or the successive cabinets, why don't we work actually on this area? This is the question that we need to raise. We have a Paris Economic Protocol. Let's do Nazareth Economic Protocol now. So the Economic Protocol of Nazareth. So there is something. Our people, this treaty, or what Mr. Al-Amour said, we know about the mandate of the Palestinian government and the occupied authority. If the PNA has a mandate only in the Palestinian occupied territory, the PLO has mandate over all the Palestinians, so they can bring in all Palestinians in the diaspora inside the Green Line and in the occupied territory. Why do we speak of donor countries? We are here. I don't know what is the GDP. It's probably 60 billion. And we go speak to donor countries whose GDP is probably negative. What is that? I'm saying that there are prospects of cooperation. We have to speak of practical steps. Even if the government is not playing its role, we as private sector institutions should continue to play a role. There's a problem that Mr. Al-Amour said. We should not keep accusing our people inside the Green Line that they will leak the land. There comes an American who establishes a company and registers ownership. But there are Palestinians here in Jerusalem who sold the lands of Jerusalem. Were they people from here? So let's not place them in a spot of accusation. So this is what we are doing to protect that. When we speak of cooperation with our people inside the Green Line, in Area C. What will prevent them from purchasing land in Area C? It will not be a decision from our government. 70% of the Palestinian land is Area C. So if someone from inside the Green Line want to purchase land in Area C, nobody will prevent them. But I tell you that we can say, come to Area C. They can bring in the necessary licenses. So why don't we establish an investment company with our people inside Palestine with these people? If we do this with our people, they cannot prevent them legally from getting the necessary licenses in Area C. By law, they can do that. So they may lay impediments, but we give protection. So it is possible to establish an investment company, $100 million. Let's subscribe to the shares. We will register it in Europe, in Cyprus, wherever. So let's cooperate in these areas, whether it be IT, industry, health, industrial estate. But how are we going to start? What is the first step? I'm afraid that we will leave this workshop and do nothing. The last point, and I said this to the head of the cabinet, what is the problem of the land? You will use a car as a collateral to the bank. Some of our people teach at Birzeit University from inside the Green Line, and they have built villas that are not registered in their name. Registered in their name and has a restriction at the land authority that it cannot be sold or something like that. If you want solutions, there are solutions. Thank you. I will give you the comment because there are 3 questions raised by Ahmad Hijawi. And then if any of the speakers wishes to understand, how can the monetary authority play an effective role in developing Palestinian economic relations? When we speak of the problem of registration of Palestinian land for holders of the Israeli ID card, are there other solutions other than finding a Palestinian partner and ensuring that there is no Israeli intervention? Regarding the exceptional situation in Gaza, have you taken its situation into consideration and devised solutions to develop the Palestinian economic relations in a 3 parts, that is Palestinians of the West Bank, inside the Green Line, and in Gaza? So I will give the floor, and then Ahmed al-Sheikh has a comment. Thank you. Good afternoon. The importance of the study is that it is trying to develop an emotional family relation into an economic relation, because the existing relation between the areas occupied in 1967 and 1948 is an emotional relation that is not based on economic foundations, and it does not have any political horizon. There are ambitious proposals at the capital authority to list companies in the 1948 area in the Palestinian stock market. There were reviews of 3 shareholdings that can be listed in the Palestinian stock exchange. The question of banks was resisted by the occupation that prevented the establishment of a joint bank between both areas after the banks started to being established in 2000 on, because it relates to Israeli tax system and monitoring of financial flows. Even opening accounts of citizens of Palestinians inside the 48 areas has so many restrictions, because they have to notify the Israeli authorities of any development of the account, but they consider this account as a form of tax evasion. So to develop the economic relationship between the areas occupied in 1967 and 1948 on an economic basis is not available because of the procedures of the Israeli authorities. As an indicator, is this huge exchange is 1.5 billion, is only 2.2 of 1,000 of the Israeli economic activity, and it is less than the impact of workers that crosses the tunnels. So the economic impact on the Zionist state is less than the impact of the illegal workers. So it does not have an economic impact on Israel. It does not boost the West Bank or the areas in 1948. So it has a limited economic effect. So it helps us a bit, but for Israel, it is marginal, and this is why they don't focus on it. The other point we are currently facing a problem is that Israel is focusing on integrating the Palestinian youth of the 1940 areas in the Israeli market, especially in the IT sector, which is accessible to us, but we're not allowed to get there. The young people in the areas occupied in 1967 are forbidden from taking part in technology companies in Israel, but those in the 1948 areas are provided with the opportunities through Mitzovin that provide the training to the youth and try to prepare them to be integrated into the Israeli economy, but they do not provide any opportunity to any IT expert who is Palestinian to work in any IT company, even if the company is American. We tried this. A young man submitted as resume to Intel company, and because he's Palestinian with a Palestinian ID card, was forbidden from working in Intel Israel. And this is part of the red lines. What I mean here is that the Palestinian Authority cannot govern the relationship of the capital. Capital moves to serve its interests. What is the authority required to do? It's a political regime that is trying to achieve political goals. It does not have economic goals other than increasing the GDP. We have a problem in the areas occupied in 1967. The first problem is the low GDP and decrease. So it's 18 billion compared to Israel 25. And we have a problem in the work structures is that most of our women are unemployed. Do you remember that unemployment among female graduates is 72%? So how can we benefit from our people inside the green line to increase our GDP and reduce unemployment? To go further and shoulder the responsibility of the PA. The PA does not have the capacity to move anything because they are bound to a political project that has its limitations and serves the Israeli interest because it impedes any potential development of the Palestinians, and we don't want to have this clash. We want to develop an emotional relation into an economic relation on possible foundations, but it needs time. Thank you. The question of implementation, as the speaker here said, I must agree with you. There's an important regulatory role, and even at the level of local authorities. But to ask ourselves what we do when we come out of here, the question is what the business and private sector and others can do. What is the private sector? Do not shoulder this responsibility on our. We started to speak of social security because we are specialists, but then it comes back to us and all the parties are watching. We did our part. We are ready to network you, but it's not. No, it's your responsibility, and it's not only the responsibility of the authority. Yes, I agree. You, the private sector, see what the government has to do, but do not come here. Thank you. So it's not Mass's responsibility. We're here to give you the study, and then the parties have to play this role. Mustafa Tarkuri, investor. I'm an investor from the Green Line area. I have 5-year experience in investing here. I agree with what was said. It is difficult to attract investment from abroad while the Palestinians inside the 48 areas have a role to go into the Israeli markets and the world market because they can work in the Israeli market, and Palestinian market needs this connection. What do we need to make the investment environment more appealing? But there is a point that I will add here is that the judiciary must be independent, and there must be a specialized court that can shorten the periods. But what matters is the industrial estates. They were moving eastward to be the economic gate to Jordan. The industrial estates that exist or that will exist, and most of them are to the east, and you've spoken of the one in Jenin. I'm sure that the industrial estate in Jenin can be an important starting point to develop any economy, because the Palestinians inside Israel to come and invest and build a factory in Palestine, they have the labor force, the land is cheaper there are more tax facilities, but it needs an investment environment, and it is necessary. They have no water, electricity, or licensing, and then they start with all these gaps and face the problems alone. So when it is an industrial estate, they can have an easier start. So linking the investment of Palestinians inside the Green Line with the rest of Palestinian territories have some success stories, and we need to work on another point. Palestine produces many labor force inside the Israeli side, and small number of them have access to the Palestinian economy inside Green Line, but most of them are workers, but they're not senior experts. Many of the factories inside the Green Line can be integrated, but here we need to build the skills and capacities and expand the scope of expertise, because the Israeli market has gained high expertise level because of the occupation. What can we do to develop these skills? What kind of mentoring and institutes to develop these skills in order to help our engineers and the students to come back with this expertise to our economy? So it is important to attract these industries, yes, but we need to do other things. That is to have these capacity building institutes. There are many ideas that were proposed here, and it will be good to have a recommendation where the government plays a major role. I believe the government must play this role, and then to protect the investment, because Palestinians inside Israel, when they want to invest here and they have problems, then nobody protects them. They will be afraid, so they will not find these huge investments, purchase of land and go find someone from the West Bank to register land in his name. The land registries have this information. Where's the problem? But when we speak of companies, the Companies Act, you as an investor, a foreign investor or Palestinian investor from inside Israel, if you want to look for someone who has a Palestinian ID to establish a company, how is it going to be a company? The new Companies Act was an important step. However, it has not been enforced on the ground, and this is a huge impediment. There isn't any investor that will come to invest and look for someone who has an ID card just to have a formality of signature. Now we speak of Al-Oja. Weren't you at Al-Oja? We developed an industrial estate in Al-Oja, in Area C, and in the Sharaf. We did many projects. But regarding the industrial estates, there are two comments. There is a comment, and you may clarify it, about the joint industrial estates. And I believe that this stems from lack of accurate understanding, especially the Jenin industrial estate. Is it an Israeli investment that is exploiting the most fertile areas and pollutes its natural resources? So it's a different thing from being an industrial state that is Palestinian. To my knowledge, there is no Israeli investment here. The industrial estate engineer is clear. It is Palestinian land. And the infrastructure was financed by the German funds. I believe that if there is Israeli investment in Jenin industrial estate, it would have been fully operational now. Let's bring investment and develop our industries. Any final comments to the speakers? The last comment, Jenin, unfortunately, even the foundation stone, it was Abu Ammar at the time. So since 1998, we were there to lay the foundation stones. This is waste. A last comment, and then we will give the floor to Ahmed Al-Sheikh, who raised his hand. My question here, the intervention you made is important, but you neutralized the government and its role. Is it because the government is not there, is not working, or its intervention should not be visible even if it's there? What did you mean? its intervention should not be there because it's a matter of Israeli licenses. You cannot move in the area occupied in 1967 and establish this relation across the Green Line without the approvals of the Israeli side. Any relationship that is established outside this framework will be doomed to fail either by closing the checkpoints or by making it complicated through intelligence services. So the question regarding the relationship between the areas across the Green Line, the companies can not employ anybody without a license from the intelligence service. So when you want to establish a ship, they will ask you if you have permits. If you don't have permits, it will be a security auditing issues. You will need the Palestinian Authority to have a license for a project for licensing. Are you going to pay taxes? So the relationship with the Palestinian Authority is different. But if there is intervention by the Israeli areas, Israel will deal with it with sensitivity because it will become political and it will have another dimension. A relationship between Palestinians on both sides of the Green Line is prospering, but it is not contractual. It does not have official contracts. Yes. To motivate this activity, it is important to establish a regulatory framework. Because people come to Jenin and shop, this is easy. There are no contracts here. So we need a legal framework to develop and formalize this relationship. The other point, as an economist, I believe that this competitive nature is a factor to make this complementary relation succeed. We learned from experience that similar countries have stronger chances of economic complementarity and not the contradicting countries. I focus on the importance of the study and that you need to have further studies. We are still in the beginning. Thank you. Ahmad, the floor is yours. Thank you. We have exceeded the time. I just want to build on what I said first, and I'm happy that Dr. Hassan Abu Libdi was here because it was the beginning shape of relationship between Al Jalil Association and the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics at the time. I want to raise the question, is it cooperation, complementarity? What stage are we in? This is a question that is worthy of further discussion because I believe that we are in a stage of cooperation, but not complementarity. But I have to build on the model that was mentioned, and there are several models in the world that we can benefit from. There are experts that have spoken of this. I started to speak of policies. Now I'll speak of markets without addressing the points that were mentioned, although many of the points cross with what I was saying. First, about the specifications of quality of Palestinian products must be done. So we need standards to make them up to the level of the Israeli and international standards. So this is an important point in order to sell Palestinian products inside the Israeli market. Some people spoke of the question of transportation and distribution of goods that will require particular permits. So I believe that if we have a system to be established in the Palestinian or the other side for the transportation of goods, the other point I want to focus on is important. I believe that the human capital we have here and in the state of Palestine, we are, as a result of the boycott, some of the academic institutions and Palestinian organizations refused to cooperate with research centers inside the Green Line. We are part of the Palestinian people. We complement the Palestinian people. Therefore, view us with a different view. We are not under what is defined as Israel. And therefore, I call for promoting scientific and educational and research cooperation between the research centers inside the Green Line. And Jalil Association has a biotechnological research center, which is very advanced and has its scientific status. You have spoken of the joint research greenhouses. Why don't we have this initiative to benefit from the scientific knowledge on both sides? And there are many things that we can contribute, and we need to break the barriers of cooperation among the academic institutions. And there's an important point to follow up what is happening in the Israeli economy and to study and assess the needs of labor in the Israeli market, and to benefit from this assessment to present a number of training to the labor force that has the qualification and ability to enter into Israel to work in senior levels. I'm speaking of the high-tech system. I know of companies that exist today that bring in Palestinian labor in the high-tech area to work in Israeli companies. It is good to have this organized with a high senior vision. You have spoken of a database of the products, and I believe also of expertise. They have to be expanded to include the expertise on both sides and skills on both sides so that they can be networked. I also believe that it's important to establish a network of public relationships, which is the basis of success, is networking between businessmen here and there, and it was mentioned, as well as a system for settlement dispute. If a dispute arises between a Palestinian investor and another one on the other side of the green line, what will be the dispute settlement system? So we need to establish a dispute settlement system. And in conclusion, the cultural factor to threat tolerance. There are mistakes committed by businessmen here and there, so there must be tolerance and forgiving the previous mistakes, and to have a positive future vision to market and support success stories. We have to create success stories of cooperation that can be marketed to both sides. Another important point, the creative and innovative ideas, or the startups. So we need to support these initiatives. It is not possible focusing on the traditional industries and light industries and food and beverage and so on. I believe that we have to start target developed industries and to establish companies that can have a good return for the Palestinian economy as well. There is another point, and last point, please. I believe that financial support. Why don't we establish a joint investment fund for the entrepreneurships and startups? Why don't we encourage the so-called angel people with some money who can invest in startups? Why don't we upgrade this initiative and the question of joint venture capital and retirement funds on both sides to invest in startups or economic initiatives that may have a return? Thank you very much, Ahmed. So I believe that this will be for the next project. So we will follow up on these points with you. Thank you very much and hope to see you soon. Thank you and welcome.